Hello, fellow writers, and welcome back once again to Writing in Progress. Justin Krebs here with John Woolley at the Ceasefire of Writing Battle. So I know we've got a lot of listeners or maybe viewers now that we're on YouTube of the podcast from Writing Battle. We're at an interesting new stage of the competition, so we thought we'd kind of check in with you all here at the Ceasefire. How are you doing today, John?
I'm doing great. Got the email about the ceasefire. I'll be honest. I married a corporate lawyer. She reads everything. I am the opposite. They talk about people being the opposite. So I read nothing. So I didn't even know what the ceasefire was. I was like, hey, we're at the ceasefire. I don't even know what that is. So all I did was get emails like, hey, you did well. So okay, awesome.
There we go. Yeah, so yeah, maybe we'll go a little out of order of my agenda then, which is totally fine. We go with the flow here on Writing in Progress. Just to talk about what the Ceasefire is, because there's been some changes to Writing Battle this time around. Max, the kind of runner, creator, owner of Writing Battle, has changed things up. One of the really great things about Max is he's very transparent about it. And he's always trying to make his product better, make the competition better. And he's moved away from the single elimination format that Writing Battle has been for as long as I've been doing it. And now there's kind of a group stage, which he's explaining it as a Swiss style, but I think it's a little different than a Swiss style, and there's like multiple stages of it. It's very interesting. You can tell a lot of thought went into it. So basically the way it works now is all the stories are grouped into what he calls houses, okay? And I think the houses are a maximum of 40 stories. And no one's eliminated during this group stage. But you're sorted based on how many points you've scored so far. So there's 5 rounds of judging, and each round you're pitted up against another story, and you're judged by 2 peer judges. So you could score 0 points, you could score 1 point if you each score 1, or you could score 2 points. We are 3 rounds in, so the most points you could have right now is 6, and the least you could have is 0. There are 5 total rounds of peer judging, so the most you could score is 10, which is very, very difficult, because my understanding, and Max has offered before to maybe come on the show, so if I'm explaining something wrong, Max, you have our email. Feel free to reach out. Maybe you can explain it better than I could. I'm going to explain it to the best of my understanding. After each round, you're pitted up against someone with close to an equal amount of points. So it kind of puts the stories who have done well against each other, so we find out which story is really the best, and the stories who have not scored as many points get pitted up against other stories that haven't scored as many, so we can kind of find out who's really the worst, and it should sort itself out better. What it eliminates, or what I should say is what it improves on from the single elimination bracket. There was a major problem of, well, what if the 2 best stories get pitted up in the first round?
Right against each other, yeah.
Yeah, then you could have a really good story out right away. This new format should eliminate that, because if you got matched up against someone really good first round and you lose both of them, well, next round you should be up against someone without as good of a story, and you should score some points pretty quickly to get back into that. So, right now, 3 rounds in, there's this ceasefire, where we've got a little break from judging, and if you don't have at least 3 points scored at this round of judging, you're being asked to bow out. So, from the message I saw, about 35% of stories are going to be taken out of the pool at this point. You need to, if you score at least 8 points in the 5 rounds, you automatically advance to the elimination round, which is not going to be peer judged.
Right, and
it's going to be judged by. It's interesting. He's called them like expert judges or official judges or something like that. It's not peer judges, but it's not like the celebrity judges that normally do it. They're just going to be the final. So there's like an extra step of judging now. And if you score 7 out of 10 points, then you are a dark horse candidate, and if there's room in the bracket, you're next in line, basically. So, for example, if like 13 stories score 8, well, then there's 3 spots open in the bracket for stories that scored 7. So you could still sneak in. So at this point, there's 4 chances left to score points. If you haven't scored at least 3, you can't. There's no path to victory, I think is what he's calling it. So you're being taken out. You don't have to judge anymore, but your story won't be judged anymore either. If you've scored at least 3, you still have a path to victory, so you're still in it. So apparently, using this format, he's gotten rid of about 35% of the stories, which means there are less stories to judge now, which makes all the logistical parts work. So, I know that sounds confusing, and I'm not even 100% sure if I know if I'm 100% right, but that's my understanding of where we are. So I just kind of, since John brought it up, I figured we'd just kind of jump into the explanation right now. And even in my writing group, a lot of us do it, and even in like the messages and stuff on there's a lot of people pretty confused about what the heck is going on. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's other listeners to the podcast who's like John saying, what the heck is a ceasefire?
Hey, I'll either get an email that says you're moving on, or email says, well, you didn't make it. And I'll be like, okay, either way, hey.
Yeah.
Good.
And good news, both John and I got the good email. So
That's right.
John and I are both still in the story.
Alive.
So are still in the competition. So congratulations, John. And yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more writing battle later in the episode. Let's do a kind of our normal thing. Just do a quick check-in since, life has happened in the last few weeks since our last episode. So, John, what have you been up to?
Just finished watching the movie Dungeons and Dragons with my daughter. Really enjoyed it. It's just a lighthearted romp, and you go into it expecting that. And I saw it had a really high score in the high 90s on Rotten Tomatoes, and I said, well, let's do this. So I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. If you go in expecting, hey, I want a lighthearted romp, it's kind of funny, got some action. They spent some money on special effects. Maybe even Bradley Cooper shows up, hint, hint, in a surprise role. But it was fun. I shall soon be getting more sleep, as a lot of people don't know. I'm a big Lakers fan. Hard to be a West Coast team fan here when you're not on the West Coast. But I've been with them forever. My dad put a poster on my wall in like 1980 of Kareem, and ever since, Kareem Magic all the way through. But my Lakers are down 3-0 to the Denver Nuggets. So there will not be a ceasefire in the NBA Western Coast Conference Finals, and I have a strong feeling that the Denver Nuggets will move on and Miami Heat will move on. Although the parallel here being the Miami Heat were like the 8th seed, and they're going to go to the finals. They have Boston down 2-0, and the Lakers were like the 8th seed, and they made all the way to the Western Conference Finals. So you can always come behind. Preparing for summer. We are near the end of school, and hopefully this summer I'll get some good writing in, and taking a trip out to the Grand Canyon with my family. What have you been up to, Justin? A lot of things.
Stuff.
A lot of things. I know that.
Yeah, track season. We're in the postseason. My team swept the conference meet, which was really excited. So both the boys and the girls, which I'm the head coach of both of them, won conferences, and
I saw that.
The boys won it pretty comfortably.
Congratulations!
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. The boys won it pretty comfortably. They took care of business. The girls, it came down to the wire, and there was some controversy, and it was quite a stressful evening. And I might actually even write about it. I don't usually write about real life stuff, but I might jump into my running blog that I very, very occasionally write in, and write about that night from my perspective, because it was a pretty interesting story about how it all went down. It was very dramatic, which kind of in some ways made it more exciting, though, when we did end up pulling it out. It made for a pretty cool moment for the team to celebrate.
That's really awesome for us. If you don't know, Justin and I are both teachers, and we have taught all of these students that are on his track teams for the most part, and that is just awesome to see them succeed. I love it. I love seeing your posts about that and seeing their pictures. I love it. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. And then this week was district championships, which are kind of a step up in difficulty. And the boys almost pulled it off, but they came up a little short to another really good school around here named Buckeye Valley. But we still got district runners up, which they give you a nice, cool trophy for that. And we've actually never even done that before. So that was a big kind of milestone for our program. And our girls got moved up to Division I,
right?
Which I have some feelings about that I'm probably going to post about. It's our 4x8, which is one of the relays. We've won districts 6 years in a row on the girls' side when we were Division II.
Right.
And, this year I looked at our time and we would have won by 21 seconds. But in Division I, we were 6th.
Yeah.
And the 5 teams that finished in front of us, I looked up their enrollment, and all of them are more than twice our size.
No.
So we're not even half the size of the teams we're competing against. So makes it a little bit tough, but proud of the girls. And then kind
little
of
David and Goliath
cool
going on there.
Yeah, a little bit. And one of our senior runners, she's a really cool kid, super hard worker, wasn't the most talented runner. We've had some runners who just stepped on the scene and were instantly good. She was our 9th runner when she was in junior high, and she actually kind of shocked the Division I people, and she won the district in the 2 miles.
So awesome. I saw that.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. She's definitely someone who's just done everything the right way for the last 6 years, and now she's a Division I district champion, and next year she's going to be a Division I college athlete. She's committed to a MAC school here in Ohio. That's
awesome.
So,
and a super nice student and a super nice girl. And you're always cheering for those students. It's just awesome.
Just a dream to coach. And I've had a lot of those. So, it's as much success, and I've certainly worked hard to do my part in the equation. But at the end of the day, you can be the best coach in the world. You got to have the athletes buy in, and I've been very fortunate to have that. So. Yeah, if you want to know more about that, you can find my running blog somewhere. We're talking about writing today, but I guess it's appropriate because my world has kind of revolved around track for the last few weeks. But I have done a little writing, and one thing, I guess, writing related, my writing group, they're always posting like things that you can enter, whether it's publications you could submit to or contests you could go into, and that's been a really cool resource for me because I didn't know how oblivious I was to everything until I joined this group, and it's like, man, there's so many opportunities out there. And one of my fellow writing group people posted a science fiction competition. It's a big one. It's they basically want a novel, but it's got really, really big cash rewards. And it's not due till the end of August. And the reason it's piqued my interest, one, it's a very niche subject. They want you to write about Dyson spheres, which a Dyson sphere is a science fiction concept of a structure that's built around a star to capture all of its energy, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And they want a story about a Dyson sphere. Which, what I like about it being such a niche subject is there's not going to be a writer sitting around with a spare Dyson sphere story they can just submit.
Everyone's going to have to make it up.
We're all kind of starting from scratch, and even in my group, which usually my group is so on top of any contest that gets submitted, 10 people are submitted. They're all kind of I don't have time to do the minimum words to submit is 30,000. It's a big one. It's 30,000 to 100,000.
Oh wow! Yeah.
The reason, everyone was like, "Oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that." And I looked at it, and usually my answer is, "I don't have time for that." But I was thinking, I was like, "Man, for the next 3 months, I kind of do have time for that." So it's in the genre that I like to do, and it kind of lines up, and I'm considering it. I haven't completely dove in. Whatever. Writer can't think of how to subjugate.
There's jogging. I
haven't jumped in.
That is a marathon. That is signing up for a marathon. That is paying the money.
It is signing up for a marathon. but I sign up
Get
for
your
lots of
bib,
marathons.
and I know you can do You've done marathons.
I know.
That might be me signing up for a marathon, which is a lot.
I know. And the way I see, and I'm not gonna lie, part of the reason it's really grabbed my interest is because it's giving out 10 prizes. It's accepting 10, and the prize money is like really good, like substantially, like mind-blowingly good. And I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of part of the reason I'm like, maybe this is how I spend my summer,
cool.
you know. So we'll see. I don't know. What does suck about if I commit to doing this is it probably distracts from some of my other projects.
Right.
But my other projects don't really have a firm deadline anyway, so why not chase this opportunity if it comes around? So I don't know. It's this whole writing thing's just for fun anyway. Exactly. Neither of us are doing this as a career. Cool. Yeah. So I've started kind of outlining, and if it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere, and if in 2 weeks I'm like, this is stupid, then I just stop. And nothing ventured, nothing gained. So cool. That's what I've been working on. That's what you've been working on. Another thing we both worked on recently, if you listened to our last episode with Ryan Fleming, John and I both participated in Writer's Playground, which was a new competition for us to try. It's been around a little while, but it was both of our first times. John, how did that experience go for you? Where did you go with your story? How'd you feel about the competition? Kind of tell us about how it went.
Well, I much like I don't read anything, I also have a tendency to procrastinate given the opportunity, which I had the opportunity. But one of the reasons I like these contests so much is because they give you a hard deadline. You have to be done by then. So I got both prompts, and I started working on. You have a whole week to work on the Writer's Playground one, and I did start outlining my story. I had the character names. I had all that, but the Writer's Playground was, I want to say, it's 3,000 words.
Yes.
And then we got the writing battle prompt, and that was a quick turnaround, but that was much, much shorter, 500 words. So, long story short, we get to Sunday, both are due, and I work really hard, and I get the writing battle one done, and I feel really good about it. And I'm working hard on the Writer's Playground, and I just started running out of time. And so I don't feel like it was all it could be, and I was against the clock there. I kind of did a Jack Kerouac thing where I famously, he wrote his book On the Road all in supposedly one sitting, and he had this typewriter, and he took the pages and he would glue them until he had this giant scroll, so he would never have to stop typing. He could just keep going. And I just tried to type kind of keep going, see where the story goes. And I don't know if I pulled that one off. I'm not sure I did. But it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it. But I do not anticipate any big winnings coming my way on that.
That's all right. It got you writing. What prompts did you end up choosing to did you go with the dog walker at the RV park?
I totally did. Dog walker, RV park, and then we all had to do scroll. Yeah.
Nice.
So
I don't think because it's not peer judged, I think we can talk about our stories.
Yeah, our stories are turned in. We don't ever see. We just find out.
I guess the only thing that could screw it up is if a judge is listening to this.
If a judge is listening.
If you're a judge from Writer's Playground, please turn off the podcast now.
If you're a judge from Writer's Playground, you're going to know my story right away. And you're going to be like, that is horrible. Trust me. Nothing I could say would redeem this story.
So, okay, tell me how you fit a scroll into a dog walker in an RV park, because I am curious about how you went with that.
I had one of the people in the RV park was a retired Egyptian archaeologist that had taught at a college, and he insisted on paying the dog walker in scrolled up dollar bills, of which he made a little like stamp that he put on every one of them. So that's
Oh,
how I use
nice.
Scroll.
Cool.
What'd your story go with? What'd you end up with?
Yeah.
Exactly what we thought,
So
or would you go a different way?
it ended up going that way. Yeah. The kind of I mentioned it right at the tail end of the episode, and actually, the idea struck only an hour or so before we filmed that or recorded that episode. But yeah, I went with Casino, and then I think for character I leaned a little bit more into veteran. I also kind of used an apprentice, but that was a little more subtle.
Uh-huh.
And actually, it was an older guy and a younger guy kind of teamed up. So if you really wanted to stretch the prompts, I think you could even say, well, you kind of made a couple with a 15-year age difference. It wasn't a romantic couple, but it was a couple of people with an age. So I think I kind of hit about 3 of the character prompts, which I don't think there's any
good.
bonus for doing that, but it started very grounded in reality in a casino where my main character, it was written in first person present. My main character was observing this guy who was just winning hand after hand after hand after hand at a blackjack table. And he was making calls that made no logical sense, but then it would still win. Like, no matter, he seemed to know what was going to happen before it happened. And then he kind of follows this guy, he kind of confronts him and wants to learn from him. The guy has no interest, he wants nothing to do with this kid. And then they kind of get chased by what you assume is, kind of like people from the casino who are pissed that this guy's probably cheating or something, kind of your typical like mobster casino things. And the
Right.
card shark takes him into this strange doorway, which leads to basically another dimension. And it was kind of inspired
nice.
by...
I like the twist.
Yes, it was inspired by kind of an internet urban legend of the back rooms, which supposedly if you go into like a conference, a very big building, you can sneak into a door and it'll take you into this kind of liminal space where there's nothing. And a lot of times in those stories, like creepy entities kind of show up and that kind of stuff. So usually it's used more for tension, and I kind of turned it in more. It's basically a 3,000 word chase scene as they're kind of running from one creepy situation to another. And I really like my story. But just like you, it came down to the wire. I didn't have anyone beta read it, which typically there's always at least a handful of things that I know beta readers would have probably caught. I did, unlike my NYC Midnight story from a few weeks ago where I didn't even reread it. This one I at least got the chance to read through it 3 or 4 times, so I'm hoping I caught most of any glaring issues.
I did not do that. It was due at midnight, and I tried to do a stream of consciousness, also in first person, and my main character was like a 12, 13-year-old boy who's a dog walker.
Yeah.
And I just was going, and I hit about 2,800 words when it was like 11:57, and I was like, okay, gotta cut it off. So
yeah, I actually
one more sentence and hit send.
Yeah, I actually went over 3,000, but in the email for this one, it said there was a 100-word grace limit.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to use the 100-word grace limit.
Push.
But even at 11:30 though, I was at like closer to 3,200. Okay. So I was desperately like searching for stuff to delete for the last half hour. I think I submitted at 11:55, so 5 minutes before. The scroll came in basically. The card shark guy, he's a veteran of the back rooms. And I even did a little wink and nod. He kind of says that in dialogue. He goes, I guess you could say I'm a veteran of this place at one point. Just to make sure I checked the prompt box. Yeah. But what you find out is he's kind of sold his soul to have this ability to see things, basically. And that's how he was able to do so well at the blackjack table. And the scroll is how he signed his soul over, and the ending, there's some twist stuff at the ending. There's a lot of character growth that happens in 3,000 words between these two guys. And I really like my story, and I wish I had another few days. What got me wasn't really procrastination so much. It was kind of a miscalculation with the 500-word writing battle story. I'm used to microfiction for NYC Midnight being 100 words or 250 words.
Right.
And I'm usually able to do, draft it, edit it, have beta readers read it, do editing software, all that stuff within a span of a few hours. It's usually like a one afternoon thing. And this was considered a microfiction for writing battle, so in my mind it was a one afternoon thing.
Right.
But it was 500 words.
Right.
And there's definitely some exponential growth in terms of word count and time spent revising.
Yes, absolutely.
So it leaked what I thought would only take me Saturday afternoon with my writing battle story leaked into Sunday, quite a bit into Sunday actually, and left me with less time for revision for Writer's Playground. So it was kind of a miscalculation on that for me.
Same sort of thing happened to me. Same thing. Yeah. I spent more time on writing battle than I thought I was going to, but then kind of snowballed in that I really liked my writing battle story, and I was like, oh, I'm really close to this one being really good. I'm going to put the time in on this because I'm literally 80% of the way there. If I just go back over this like 4 or 5 more times, I think I'll be able to tighten this right up. Which I did, but same thing. Then all of a sudden I'm looking up at the clock. I'm going, wait a minute, that other one's good due today too.
Yeah, and same thing for me with writing battle. I had a draft I really liked, and I got several beta readers to read it. I got to implement some of their feedback. I was able to do my editing software. I probably read through that myself at least a dozen times. So I do feel like that one was really polished. But the problem is I spent so much time polishing that one, it probably cut into my Writer's Playground. So the good news is, and I've actually had a listener reach out and say that this advice kind of changed their perspective on these competitions, is even if the Writer's Playground one doesn't get selected and I just get a rejection, I've got the bones of a really good story that I like.
Yeah.
I can edit it up this summer, and now it's something I could add to my short story collection that I plan to self-publish at some point. So, that's how I look at these. It forces me to write a story, and win or lose, at the end I'll have a story that I can continue to work with and change. And a lot of times it comes with feedback from the judges. And from what Ryan told us, Writer's Playground gives exceptional feedback. He raved about how great their feedback is. So
my story will put that to the test. It's probably very short and curt. This is horrible. What were you doing? I see this is submitted at 11:59. It was due at midnight.
I don't think we were alone in that, though. Especially a lot of people who did that one. You don't do NYC Midnight. Over the span of the week of Writer's Playground, there was actually an NYC Midnight story in the first weekend of it, the 100-word micro competition, which I liked my story for that too. So I had 2 microfiction stories on the beginning and end of this week. I felt really good about those 2 small stories, but they really took away time from, and I didn't have a lot of time.
I want to do an NYC one too. I'm meaning to look it
NYC. What's cool, NYC Midnight to me feels kind of like the big leagues, right? They have thousands of people submit, whereas writing battle's growing. It may get there at some point, but at this moment in time, the prize money's bigger. There's a lot more people. The competition's higher.
Right.
But you're stuck with whatever prompts you get, which you could look at as a positive or a negative. Yeah. The negative is you're stuck with whatever if you're a science fiction writer and you get romance, guess what? You got to write romance. There's no swapping out genres or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you get 2 prompts that suck with your genre, it doesn't matter. Those are what you're writing. But I guess in some ways you could look at that as a positive, as it really sees who's got the most writing skill, who can write outside of their comfort zone. And it probably grows you as a writer.
Absolutely.
More. Another downside, I would say, if I'm being objective with NYC Midnight, is it's starting to get pretty expensive. The prices keep going up. I just entered which one? The Flash Fiction. I just entered the Flash Fiction. I got their early bird pricing, and I had a discount code from my writers group, and I think it was still $52, which is a lot of money for a writing competition. You know,
yeah, especially when you do really short ones. You're like, am I playing $1 a word here? What are we doing?
Yeah. Now this one, at the Flash Fiction for NYC Midnight, at least you get 2 rounds guaranteed.
Okay.
So I'll get 2 1,000-word stories submitted, and both will be judged, and I'll get judge feedback, and you have access to the forums, so you get peer feedback. I think you could justify it as that's what you're paying for. But in terms of, like, is this a smart lottery ticket to buy? You're probably not going to get your money back on the prize money. But the good thing about NYC Midnight is if you are one of the fortunate very few, and let me say very few because it's like 10 out of 6,000 usually, the prize money is higher there typically than what you'll see in some of the other competitions. So it is what it is. But yeah, I do, writing is a hobby for me. It's not a source of income. But as I start to enter more and more and more of these competitions, and the entry things do start to add up after a while, it's like, how much am I willing to spend to keep writing all this, and how am I going to offset that cost? But all right. Anyways, that's probably enough about Writer's Playground. Let's switch back to Writing Battle. So we already kind of primed you on where we're at. We're at the Ceasefire. John and I are both still alive. John, we're going to rewind the clock a little bit to a few weeks ago when we were writing this. It was towards the end of Writer's Playground. And, of course, we first get the email from Max telling us the 4 genres. And I'm going to read those to our listeners right now in case they aren't familiar with them, or in case you just need a refresher. So 1 was magical realism. Magical realism is a genre that incorporates magical or supernatural elements into otherwise realistic settings, characters, and events. Unlike traditional fantasy or science fiction, where the magical or supernatural is often explained or rationalized within the story's internal logic, magical realism presents these elements as a natural and accepted part of the world in which the story takes place. So that was magical realism. Then there's conspiracy. Conspiracy is a genre that involves a protagonist who uncovers a conspiracy or cover-up that threatens their own safety, and often the safety of others. It is a reoccurring theme in these works that characters who are unraveling the conspiracy face challenges in discerning the truth amidst a web of deceptions. As rumors, lies, propaganda, and counter-propaganda pile up, it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish between what is part of the conspiracy and what is merely a coincidence. I will say, kind of interjecting here for a second, there's a bit of irony that the descriptions of these are probably longer than the 500 words we have to write the stories. Military Lampoon. Military Lampoon is a subgenre of satire that parodies the military and its culture through humor and exaggeration. This genre often takes a critical look at the military's bureaucracy, its hierarchical structure, and its norms and traditions. The stories often include humorous depictions of military life, such as the experiences of new recruits or the absurdity of training exercises, as well as the sometimes grim realities of combat. And finally, environmental drama. Environmental drama is a genre that focuses on environmental issues and their impact on society and individuals. The stories often examine environmental degradation, pollution, climate change, and other issues through the eyes of characters who may be activists, scientists, politicians, or ordinary people. This genre explores the complex relationships between humans and the natural world. I think he did add a little bit of verbiage in, I don't think it was in the email, but it was somewhere in something he sent out to everyone. The genre should be like moving the story forward. He was a little bit more direct in saying, like, you need to make sure you're staying on genre and
Right.
not trying to push the boundary too much.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
let's do this. Let's go one by one. And before we talk about kind of our strategies and stuff, what were just like, before you knew which genre you had, your like initial reactions to hearing each one. So let's start with magical realism, John. What were your thoughts with magical realism when you read that in the email?
That would probably not be my forte, but I kind of, part of me is kind of excited to write something different sometime. So I would have been okay with that too. I know that was more into your realm of things.
Yeah. When I read that one, I thought that's a good one. I did have the thought, and this is a total writing battle thought though. When I read the 4 genres, I saw magical realism, and I'm like, that's gonna be the one everyone wants.
Yeah.
And so there was part of me that didn't want magical realism because I felt like that would be the most populated one, which would make it the most difficult one to advance in.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And we'll follow up on that in a few minutes because I think my prediction was correct. I don't know what about it. I think it's an interesting genre. I also think the genres that are the most open-ended tend to be ones that people gravitate toward because they can take it in a lot of directions.
Yeah.
And magical realism, you can really bend it in a lot of different ways. Right. Unlike, say, in my opinion, Military Lampoon is really hard to take in different directions. You're kind of locked into a really specific type of story. Let's go with that one next, even though it's a little out of order from what he sent. What were your reactions to Military Lampoon?
I immediately think of old TV shows or movies like McHale's Navy or something like that. They've made Military Lampoon TV shows and movies. I immediately think of those, even parts of MASH maybe.
Sure.
And that's immediately what I think of. I would see that as one of my strengths if I were to get that genre. Is I like humor and I would say sarcasm and those type of things. Definitely up my alley.
Yeah. The way I pictured it as I was reading it was like if Leslie Nielsen did a Full Metal Jacket parody. Like that's kind of in my head. Like what I was picturing.
Yes.
And what I think is hard about Military Lampoon, and I've judged a lot of Military Lampoon, and we'll get into judging in a little bit, but I think it's a really hard genre to figure out. It's supposed to be a little bit comedy, it's supposed to be a little bit satire, but it's all supposed to fit under this umbrella of military.
Right.
And you only have 500 words, you gotta be funny, and whenever you're forced to be funny, it's just harder to be funny.
I think it's the type of thing where you take a big swing, but you could totally hit a home run, but you could totally strike out as well, very easily within that genre. It seems like you could write a middling story in some of the other genres, but that one would either be like, oh, this is, I chuckled, I laughed, that's really good, or wow, that one did not do what we were hoping it would do.
Yeah, and as I read that one, with magical realism, kind of connecting this back to last season of Writing Battle, I saw that as what was the dark one that you didn't want that I had to write? Occult. Yeah, I thought magical realism is the occult of this season. Like everyone's gonna want that one. It just seemed to be. And when I read Military Lampoon, I immediately thought, well, this is the meet cute. Like, it's very niche.
Yes, I would.
There's a certain type of writer who likes. So, I as I saw it, I was like,
that's a good parallel. Meet cute from last round and Military Lampoon. I think that's a very good parallel. And like you said, they both almost come with a laid out agenda of kind of how it would go. Meet cute is kind of tells you exactly what it's going to be about. Military Lampoon.
So when I saw Military Lampoon, my reaction was like, it's not the one I want to write. Like, that's not my style of writing. But if I get it, I'm probably in the least populated genre, so I might have the best chances of winning. So if I write it well, maybe I can make it work. But so I don't know. Both of those had like there was one I really liked, but I was kind of afraid to go into it, and then there was one I didn't really like, but maybe that would be the reverse psychology was going.
Yeah,
maybe I want to go into that one because there might not be
as many people in there, and
Which brings us to the middle two, which the middle two I would compare to last season's. What were they? Gosh, I'm forgetting everything. I should have.
Winter Survival was one.
You're right. That was one. Winter Survival and Justin.
There's another magic realism type one, wasn't there?
Yeah, I'll think of it later. I should know it. I'm pretty sure it was Lost World.
Lost World.
Yep.
Yeah.
So to me, conspiracy and environmental drama was like Winter Survival, and conspiracy was like Lost World. They were like the two in the middle. That kind of niche, but still open-ended enough that I feel like people aren't going to avoid them. They're kind of the safe ones, right? So I don't think there was one, and we can kind of, we haven't reacted to conspiracy, or conspiracy for me was probably the one I was rooting the most for. I like to write that kind of stuff. My biggest fear with conspiracy is it's really hard to pull it off in 500 words.
It is very, very
you're
difficult.
Supposed to, you're supposed to layer in all these, different weaving things. That was the one when I read his description. I'm like, the way you're describing this is impossible to do in 500 words.
That'd be very difficult.
That was my big red flag with conspiracy. I liked it the best, but 500 words is hard. What was your reaction to conspiracy?
Kind of the same. I thought 500 words weaving in a conspiracy, you'd almost have to play on some former knowledge that you hope the reader had, because you don't have a huge amount of time for exposition. So maybe I work in whether it's, pyramids, or whether it's, Bigfoot or something that maybe the reader already has experience. Then I can jump right into the story because I only have 500 words. I only have 500 words to play with. So,
that's, you're hitting on a lot of things that I completely agree with, and we might talk a little bit more later in the episode. So the last one was environmental drama. This is one I didn't have a lot of super positive or negative reactions to it. It was kind of one that I was like, if I get that, I think I'll be okay with it, but I'm not rooting to get it. I'm not rooting to get it. I think there's anytime you see the word drama, I immediately am like, okay, that's cool. I like to write drama. That's kind of up my alley. And environmental stuff, there's a lot of really great subject matter you could latch onto right now. So that was another one.
And it seems very timely, very pressing, if you will. Everyone has an opinion about this. This is a strong thing. I immediately thought, I teach science. I'm a science teacher. So I felt like, if I get this one, I would have at least background knowledge to not have to look up a bunch of things. I could say, hey, I've taught some of this before, so I kind of have a decent understanding of at least global warming and some of the environmental pollution stuff. Definitely.
Right.
And so I felt in that part of the genre, I felt pretty good about it.
Nice.
But like you said, it's really wide. That one's really wide. You could go a lot of different ways. You could go the whole world to some kid in his backyard with some type of pollution or something like that. So a lot of room in that one to go a lot of different directions.
Totally. Yeah. Cool. So that was our reactions, kind of our initial reactions to all four. What was your strategy going in? Was there one, last time we talked, you knew if you got a call, you were definitely rolling off. And if you got anything else, you were staying because you were so afraid of getting a call. Did you have a strategy going in this time? Or
I think my strategy from the last time, I had the opportunity after the whole thing was over to read people who did a cult in a really neat way. And I realized, hey, my fears of a cult probably were unfounded. There would be a neat way to do this, and it wouldn't have to be anything overtly satanic or anything like that. You could do it a different way. So my fear of that kind of got put aside. I kind of would have been good with all four of these. And then my initial thing was like, as I started laying out my story, you don't have a time for a whole bunch of scenes or a whole bunch of characters.
No.
And
no.
I came away from this round saying I love short almost better.
Yeah,
I really like
fun.
short, and I feel like I played better with short. Like when our last one was 2,000 words, I think.
1,000. The last one was 1,000.
Was it 1,000? Yeah. And with 500 words, you're in it really quick. And I just found I hand wrote out my story on a legal pad, and then I typed it up. And when I was done typing, I was at 496. So, and I didn't know how long it was. Perfect. Like I just wrote it, and I was like, wow, I almost nailed 500 just by free writing.
That's great.
So I was like, hey, I like this. And I do feel like when I free wrote the last round, I was kind of like, oh no, I got to go back in and put a little bit more and just lengthen this, and make this character deeper. And I really like short. Short is the way to go for me, which is a kind of a neat thing to learn. And I'm sure there's people that learn the opposite as they write. So,
yeah. Some people don't like short. I like short. I also like doing long sometimes though. So I can appreciate.
I can see me
both.
Just zeroing in on short competitions from now on.
Yeah,
I could totally see myself doing that.
It's a lot less stressful. I find it at least like in terms of finding time to do everything. We were talking about Writer's Playground earlier. That 3,000 word one, it was hard to find. It's something to me that you don't even think about when you're outside these competitions. Every time I wanted to read back through my 3,000 word story, it was like a 10, 15 minute read through. Whereas when I read through my 500 word story, it's like a 2-minute read through. So reading it through 10 times, which I like to do for the 500 words, that's 20 minutes, no big deal. Whereas for the 3,000 word, we're talking hours, that makes a big difference.
That makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Asking for betas. It's easier to find people willing to read a 500 word story than a 3,000 word.
Beta, especially those micro ones you did. Hey, can you read these 100 words? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you in 25 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For me, my strategy, I was feeling a lot the same way you were. I didn't have any that I was super afraid of or any that I was really rooting for. I think my least favorite was probably Military Lampoon, but I had even convinced myself that if I got that one, I wasn't going to be that upset with it. I think deep down I was kind of rooting for Conspiracy, but it wasn't anything that I was like, oh, I really hope I get it. Like I felt kind of similarly about all four. They all had kind of strengths and weaknesses to them. Which one thing we're allowed to share? John and I have to be very careful today because the peer judging is not over, and we have listeners from the competition. We are both in theory. John or I could judge each other.
Yep. We don't even know what we're doing. No idea.
We have no idea. We know what genre each of us are in. That's kind of kosher to share. That's been established in the competition for a long time. It's okay to share genres. You can find out what genre you're writing in. And I drew Conspiracy right off the bat and decided to stick with it. John, just genre. What did you draw, and did you choose to re-roll?
I drew environmental science, and I just stuck with it too.
Yeah, so we both stuck with it. I'm Conspiracy.
I will say this competition, we don't even know. I literally could have judged yours already, and I would not know.
I did have a round of environmental drama.
Could have mine. We won't even know.
We don't know. We haven't told each other
anything about them. No idea.
Yeah, so we have to be we want to talk about it, what we can, but there's not much we can, and we're afraid of influencing people. There's a few generic things that I feel like I probably could say, but I don't want to upset anyone, listening, and so we're probably going to stay pretty mum on things. I think one thing that we probably can get away with just saying, did you redraw any of, don't tell me what they were, but did you make any redraws on your subject or your word?
I did not. I just,
Nice.
whatever came up is what I went with. I went with it. Whatever came up, I just was like, this is what I'm rolling with.
Yeah.
I feel like that's easier to do when it's shorter too.
Yeah. I did one reroll on subject. I stuck with my word. My word, I don't think this is giving it. It was a challenging word, but I felt like it had a lot of potential in conspiracy. So I stuck with that word, even though it was a little bit challenging.
Cool.
And it definitely dictated where my story went, just based on that one word. And then my initial subject, although very interesting and intriguing, I felt like it just didn't pair well with the word. I felt like they were taking me two separate directions. So I figured, hey, I got 6 draws. I'm going to chance it, and even if my first redraw or second redraw, like I can keep one of these next 6 draws is going to be okay.
One of these will fit.
Yeah, so I did draw once on subject, and my second one I got fit really well with what I wanted to do. Like kind of where I was already thinking the story might go, this subject fit really well with it. So then I was set at that point after one redraw. And yeah, I'm really happy.
Yeah,
with,
I liked mine. I liked
it
a lot. I thought it came out well. So
cool.
And we'll see.
Cool.
We'll see.
And that's probably as much as we can probably say.
All we can say. I do have a question for you. And this goes all the way back to the many stories I read from our last round and everything like this. And I clicked on an article recently, and I was interested to get your opinion because it's one of those things you read and then you start thinking about it and you say, oh, maybe they have something there. And the point of the article was movies and TV shows are affecting story writing to too much of a degree. And the more I started to look at things, the more they're like, the words of writing a script have words like panned and we're starting to see these seep into people's short stories. And all of a sudden people are always wanting to set their stories on TV shows or in movies or make reference to those, or even when they're talking about characters, their eyes pan or they turn as though they were looking as though it were a movie shot or a TV show, or it's a camera one. We're looking at this kind of, and the more I looked at things, the more I thought, wow, that does seep into how we write in a lot of ways. And I thought that was interesting. And I started to look at my own writing and be like, am I using movie terms and TV terms just because I watch a lot of TV and movies and now they've seeped into my storytelling? I thought that was interesting. And I looked at some of my old stories and I said, oh, maybe I do that. Yeah.
I think there's definitely influences. I think the way I write is probably influenced by, I've probably consumed a lot more stories through TV and movies than I have literal books in my adult life. So I'd definitely say, I don't think it necessarily affects my words because prose for me is very separate. It's kind of I don't think I use words like pan or anything like that. I think it could affect how I write dialogue for sure. And I think where it's probably a bigger effect is how I pace my stories. It might be more of a TV show or movie pacing than very literary books might be. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that.
No, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It's just, I think for the first time I was really aware of it, and I was like, wow, we as a writing community do that more than I was realizing. And they went through all these different terms that they use in a movie script. And it's like, do you see these a lot in people's short stories that have nothing to do with the movie script? And I started reading the terms and I was like, I totally see these. Instead of saying he saw this, they say, you know, his eyes pan to the right and there, you know, and it's like, wow, this is almost like a shortcut, because they were comparing movie scripts to short stories and saying, hey, these short stories are starting to look a lot like scripts rather than the short story they started out to be. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, wow, that is kind of seeping in there. Interesting.
Yeah. And some of these competitions have screenwriting competitions. So NYC Midnight has 2 screenwriting competitions every year. Writing Battle used to do screenwriting competitions. I don't think he's done one of those in a while. So it would be interesting. I've always been too afraid of them.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know what I was doing.
Yeah, the formatting piece there is just so much. But I have friends in my writing group who do really well with them. So it's kind of something like down the line. Maybe
I can see myself dipping my toe into that just for fun. Yeah, like just for fun, just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, one person in my writing group's having a lot of success with it. I think they just actually signed for like their first movie with like a Hollywood producer type thing. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of opportunity out there if you pursue it. But yeah, to answer your question, I would say it probably does influence how I write, but I don't think for me personally it's on word choice. I think it's on more like big picture stuff like pacing. I will say from, you know, I've done 4 writing battles now, I think, before this one. So I've judged 40 stories and read countless more on forums, whether it was NYC Midnight forums or, you know, whatever. I've probably read hundreds of short stories. I will say there's a few of them that you read and you're like, okay, you're writing a script. Like this is 90% dialogue. And for me, that's a pretty big turnoff in a short story. I think some people don't mind. Some people don't mind if it's mostly dialogue. For me, that starts to feel a little white room when you don't have at least some sort of prose and scene setting, and it feels like there's an element of storytelling that's missing if you're 100% dialogue. So but I think sometimes that could be, because obviously, if your only form of stories you consume is through movies and TV, you know, really the only words you're getting in those obviously is dialogue. So I would guess that would influence people to be more dialogue heavy. Now I wonder how it affects our readers. You know, do readers?
I wonder if readers notice that. I also wonder if you like turn something into an agent or something. Would they see that? I guess I saw it for the first time, and all of a sudden I started seeing it in a lot of places. I thought it was interesting. Kind of stuck with me for over a week. I was like looking at things and like, oh, yeah,
interesting. So speaking of looking at things with a critical eye, the next thing on my note card here, let's talk about judging. But again, we're going to be pretty generic because we don't want to. Some of the stories we judged are probably still in the competition. We don't want to influence anyone who's judging in the future. You know, some of these stories, so we're not going to cite anything specific, no titles or prompts or anything like that. We're just kind of talking about the overall experience of judging. John, this is your first time. You have now judged 6 stories here at the Ceasefire. What are your kind of general thoughts?
I definitely like judging 500 words. You read them through pretty quick, and I feel like that gives you a good turnaround. I think judging helps make you a better writer, because now you have 100%. To go through someone else's work and kind of pick out what they did really well, maybe some places where they could have improved, and you can't help but look at your own work and say, wow, I don't do that very well either, or wow, that's something I could do better that they already are doing better. So I think it helps your own work as much as anything. They often say the best way to learn something is to have to teach it. And in a way, you're kind of not really teaching, but giving feedback, if you will. And all of a sudden you're learning in a different way. And I think it's very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. You're forcing yourself to be critical, which is going to allow you to be more critical of your own work, which will in turn make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree 500 words is easier in some ways because it just goes a lot quicker.
Right. I have to pour over
time is a big thing. I will say though, sometimes in the 500 word stories, it's harder to find things to critique.
That's true.
Because
That's
there's
true.
not as much
There's
there.
not as much there.
And there's been a few stories that I've gotten and I've read, and my general reaction to them is, it's fine. You know,
Yeah.
it's good. I don't have anything that I really didn't like about it, but also when comparing it to another story, I maybe didn't like it quite as much. And with the 500 words, it's so short and quick. Sometimes I do find myself staring at that empty box thinking, what the heck am I going to put in here? So I do think that part of it's a little trickier. I've had a few stories where I feel like I kind of have to stretch to think about what I want to put in some of the feedback boxes. But yeah, I agree, which makes me even more the next round of writing battle. Quick little plug for Max here, is a 250 word. So I forget when exactly that one starts, but it'll be in a couple months.
Yeah.
And that one, judging will go super fast.
Yeah, exactly. And
But,
writing will go
you'll
super
have
fast
even-
as well.
That's true too. Yeah, but that one will be even less words to pick apart in the judging stage, and that's okay. But yeah, I would agree. So just full disclosure, I've judged 2 rounds of Military Lampoon, and then 1 round of environmental drama. I did have one standout. I'm not gonna say any specifics, but I do want to just say I had one environmental drama I read that was just jaw-droppingly good. I loved it. It's not very often in judging I read one and I'm like, that's a 10 out of 10. But this one felt like that for me. It was just outstanding. So it was pretty cool to get the chance to read that. I'm very much looking forward to when the forums open up. Hopefully that person posts, and I'm looking forward to see who that author is. So yeah, I'm sure that one will be making it far in the brackets because it was outstanding. What genres, without giving anything away or anything, what genres have you judged?
I did
so far?
Military Lampoon twice, and then Conspiracy Theory.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we've both done Military Lampoon twice, which part of the reason why that's interesting. I want to make sure. I think I have it pulled up on Twitter here. Let me see. Yes, here are the stats Max shared out. So, where things landed, Magical Realism has 162 stories, Conspiracy has 140, Environmental Drama has 127, Military Lampoon only 83. So, there are twice as many Magical Realism stories as there are Military Lampoon. So I do think that's a little funny because that was exactly my prediction going into it. When I read it, I was like, yeah, Magical Realism is going to have everybody, and that one has by far the most stories in it. And Military Lampoon, there isn't going to be as many people, and that one has by far the fewest. So I must have done these things enough to have a feel for this kind of thing. So it was kind of funny to see where that landed. So you and I are in the middle ones. But it's funny that we've each, statistically, it's kind of, neither of us have had Magical Realism to judge, which there's the most stories for. And we've both had Military Lampoon twice, which has the least stories for. So, yeah, just funny how that works out. But
well, I'm by your
maybe I'll
get
a there you go. Maybe I'll get a Magical Realism here in the next 2 rounds. And one thing I did want to clear up, I had this thought, in case anyone's listening and you were hearing me talk about betaing these stories, you're like, what the heck? When I send it to betas, there's 2 groups, and actually I'm supposed to talk about betas in a later thing, but I have a group of, they're mostly my friends and acquaintances and colleagues. They're people who aren't writers, they're readers. Some of them are English teachers. One's a librarian. It's just people like that. And John is usually in that group that I send out stuff for. But whenever I'm doing NYC Midnight, I take John out of the list and I don't send it to him. And then in my writing group, we're pretty well organized with all this, and we split it up by genre. And we, everyone who's doing Conspiracy has their own little group chat with just other people doing Conspiracy. And once you're in your group chat with other people in your genre, we do share some information. We do beta reads and stuff because there's zero chance of us judging each other because we're competing against each other. So that is who I send my stuff out to. So no conflict of interest. I don't send it to John or anyone else.
I have no idea
in the competition from from outside my genre. So, cool. So we talked about judging. Any other thoughts on Writing Battle this round, John?
No, it's been a lot of fun. I definitely love the short.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. Especially with Writing Battle with all the judging and when the debrief forum opens, and it's so much easier to read stories in the debrief forum when it's only 50 words. Yeah. Okay, so that brings me to kind of our whippersnapper shout-outs here. I have two I wanted to read this time. One is a pair of questions from a listener who wants to remain anonymous, so we're not going to say a name or anything, but we appreciate you listening, our anonymous listener. She has a question for each of us. Why don't I start with yours, John, since I just talked about baiting for a second. So it says, John, you write a lot about your family. Do you ever consider a story is too personal or private to share? I have written creative nonfiction stories about my family member. I'm going to keep it vague so that I don't share anything they don't want shared. These stories remain locked in my computer as they don't always depict this person in a positive light. Have you ever been in a similar situation?
Yes, I have. And funny story that goes with that. The first thing I got published was a story I've actually read on this show called The Curse. It's about going home at Christmas with my family, and it doesn't portray everyone perfectly. It's very amusing. So anyway, I set that into our local newspaper, this is like 15 years ago or 12 years ago, whatever. And I sent it into our local paper, and they immediately were like, yeah, we want to publish this. So then they publish it, and I'm thinking no one's going to see this, how would my family see this? And weirdly enough, like the day that it publishes, like my family comes in town and my mom buys a newspaper that day. And I was like, oh no. So then I see my mom because she's in town that day and she bought a newspaper and I didn't even know she was going to be in town that day. And then she's like, well, you made an awful lot up there, didn't you? And I was thinking, no, I didn't. I didn't make anything up. Like, this is exactly what happened. But if that makes you feel better, I would answer it by saying the way I've gotten around this is in my writing, I continually make the person I'm making fun of myself. So in my entire Car Seat Conversation book, it's the hapless dad and the two kids that outsmart him at every turn. And they're the ones with the punchlines, and I'm the one that's, so I've often found making fun of myself is always appropriate, and making fun of others is not what I want to do. Another quick thing I'd share is early on, I was posting things under my own name and stuff. And I was a stay-at-home dad during the summer. And again, this would have been probably a dozen years ago. And I posted something funny because I went to the park and it was all moms at the park with their kids. And I posted something funny because, the moms just looked like they threw on whatever clothing. And I thought it was kind of funny. And like all these people were like, these moms are just trying to do the best they can. What kind of person are you? And I immediately took it down and thought, I do not want to be mean-spirited ever. So I just won't be. The person that I'm going to make fun of is me, and that's kind of how I've kept it centered on my experiences and kind of centered on I'm the butt of the joke almost all the time. Yeah. So that's kind of how I've worked around that.
Yeah. And I don't write nonfiction. But in my story, my really big manuscript that's unfinished, but I've shared with some people, called Awakening. Some of the characters are loosely based off of some of my friends and people I know and that kind of thing. And some people have caught on. and I will say when I started it 10 years ago, it was more closely related. As the stories developed over time, the characters have kind of grown into their own people. Right. one of the characters in the book is named Andy. He's based off of my best friend from high school, college, who was the best man in my wedding. I was the best man in his wedding.
Yeah.
His name's Alex. He's quite the character. But Andy and Alex are different people.
Right.
The way I explain it is the kind of the soul and the spirit of Andy. It was a seed planted by my, memories of Alex, but it grew into its own character. So I guess I don't know if that's helpful or at all, but if you ever have someone like confronting you about that was an explanation that I kind of landed on that articulated how I felt about the character. Yeah. Like, I like who you are so much that I kind of use that as inspiration. But as I write my characters in these scenes, I'm not thinking, how would Alex react to this? What would Alex say? It's Andy, but Andy's kind of inspired, by the spirit of Alex a little bit. So I don't know if that's helpful at all.
No, I do. I think I hold the rights to make fun of my own kids because they're my kids. And
sure.
I had them so I could someday write this book. And that's the whole point of having these children. So, yeah, you guys do amusing things, and then I'll write about it. And then someday everyone will read about it, and it'll be amusing and funny. So,
yeah. I think if you're at all negative and I think another good thing to say here is if you're unsure, like, talk to the person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, if they're like, yeah, don't do that, then don't do that. But you might find that they might find it, really cool. And some people would love to kind of read your thoughts on that kind of thing. So, could be a conversation to have with someone. All right. This listener's other question directed toward me. I kind of already talked about this a little bit today, so I'll try to keep it brief. It says, Justin, during one of the older Writing in Progress episodes, you mentioned having 27 beta readers, which struck me as a lot. Can you tell us about how you manage the beta reader process? What advice can you share? So, so my beta reading process has changed a little bit recently. What it used to be, and at the time of recording that episode, basically, if a person that I trusted, if it ever came up in conversation that I'd like to write, so for example with a colleague or something like that, if I'd say, hey, if you're interested to read more, I'm always looking for people to read. Would you like to be added to my beta reader list? And I'm pretty comfortable sharing with people. I think that's a big reason why I have a lot of beta readers, is because I'm not super shy about it. I'm a type 3 Enneagram, so I want to share with people. So yeah, and then because I have so many people on this list, I can, every time I send something out, I can kind of say, hey, no pressure, but if you're available sometime today to read this, I'm looking for readers. And I usually give them, like, this was my genre and my prompt, this is when the deadline is, and
right.
And the way I look at it is, if I share it with 30 people and 5 of the 30 respond, then I just got 5 people to beta read. And then if there's someone that I feel like this story is up their alley and I really hope they read it, like, I'll send them a text too. All of these people are people that I'm close enough that I have their cell phone number. If you kind of want to know, like, what level of... It's not like random people I meet off the street. Like, it's someone I have a pretty good relationship with. Some of them are very literary people, and some of them are just my buddies from college who, watch a lot of TV shows or whatever. And that's kind of what I consider like my non-writing beta group, and they're very helpful. John's in that group, even though he's a writer, obviously, but John's in that group, and John has responded and given me a lot of good advice over the years.
I used beta readers on my book. So when I got to the stage of my book, I used beta readers. And a different direction I've gone with than you is I hired people off Fiverr to read my book and give me feedback and kind of find corrections and mistakes I made. But I also used beta readers that were, like you said, just friends. And I found there was a strength in finding someone that was just far enough away from me that they would tell me the truth And I haven't used beta readers very often or valued their opinion a huge amount that I'm really close with, because of course, they're like my friends are going to be like, oh, this book's the greatest. It's the best. I really valued the opinion of the guy I was one removed from, who read it and was like, I really, really like this. And you don't really know me very well. And then I was like, that's very valuable to me. Or a teacher that gave me a lot of feedback that was, I hadn't talked to in probably 20 years. That was like, hey, I read this whole thing. I'm going to tell you what I really thought about it, and really liked it. It was super positive. So actually that was a big pick me up. And I think those beta readers can help you know if you're going on the right path or not, especially when it comes to a longer manuscript. That really did help me. I was like, hey, I've rough drafted this. Is this any good? And I gave it to one beta reader, and she was like, this is awesome. Please finish this. And I think if she'd have been like, yeah, this is okay, I would have never finished my book.
Right. Yeah. I'd say another thing, the friends who are willing to tell you if you've got spinach in your teeth.
Yeah.
The friends who are going to tell you the truth because they don't want, and those people, if you can get them to be beta readers, it's really helpful. And then I would say also just like your detail-oriented friends who sometimes what I just need a beta reader to do is say like, you missed a comma here. Sometimes that's really helpful. Now what's changed recently since I've joined this writing group is now I also have them as a resource. And usually the way that works, and there's about 150 people in this group, it's somewhat selective. You have to like be invited in, and then you have to like go through their little screening process and stuff to get in. But once you're in that, a lot of times we do beta swaps. So like we create events for the competitions we're doing. So there might be 20 people in the NYC Midnight Flash Fiction one or whatever.
Right.
And then when like the deadline's coming up, you just go to that event and there'll be someone who posted on there like, hey, I just finished my draft. Anyone willing to beta swap? And usually we just do a Microsoft Word doc and you leave it open for commenting, and yeah, they're great. They you can tell that they are it's a different level of beta for sure. Like it to like take away from the other group I do, because that's really helpful too, but this group will really challenge you on some things that are like next level editing. Like I can't even think off the top of my head of some.
The lady I hired off Fiverr was a college professor in English. She was outstanding, super nice. And she was just but like you said, I also needed someone to go through and be like, this tense isn't right. You missed a comma. You missed, those type of things.
Right. Yeah, totally. All right. One other whippersnapper responded to something. This was a Facebook message, I think. So let me get into that. It says, hello, I've been listening to episode 26 in the car. It's the episode on voice. So this was 2 episodes ago. And wishing it was a live radio show so I could call in. You may get there, but as I'm not quite finished listening, but I wanted to say that you and John are not talking about the same type of voice in this episode. There's the author's voice, and then there's the character's voice. Very simply, the author's voice equates to style, the quality that makes their writing unique, memorable, and typically remains the same across works. The character's voice is the character's filter, thoughts and speech, and perspective. That should change from character to character. If you're interested, here's a very basic primer. She shared a link with us. She said, sorry, not trying to lecture, but it was just sort of funny as I was listening and wanted to shout, you're both right. So maybe or we
both
were
wrong
from the
probably.
beginning, John.
More
we
likely
weren't
with
specific.
me.
Yeah. So apparently, when we did our elements of storytelling and we just grouped it in voice, maybe we weren't being quite specific enough. Maybe we needed to separate it out into
narrow that down a little bit
author's
more.
voice and character's
That
voice.
totally makes sense now that she says that, though. Yeah, you could pick up certain authors and pick up their voice very, very quickly, and then those same authors could write different books in totally different genres. I'm thinking like Mark Twain wrote, Pauper and what is it? Connecticut Yankee and The Court versus Tom Sawyer versus.
Right.
Yeah. I see what she's saying.
Totally.
She's absolutely right too.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, if any other listeners were listening to our voice episode where John and I were kind of debating things, there's the answer. We were we were both arguing different points. Cool. So, I think that's a pretty good place to kind of wrap things up. I don't have my list of all our different social media platforms in front of me. I'm completely scatterbrained at the moment. So, you can find us. We're on YouTube now. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and you can get us at Gmail. So, I will put all of the usernames and addresses in the description of this episode. So if you're interested, you can look at and find them there. Or you can listen back to the last episode where I read them off at the end.
That'll work.
But thank you for listening. If you are here from Writing Battle, good luck. And Max, if you're listening, I know you listen sometimes. And if we got anything wrong with our description this time around, feel free to, our email, reach out, and you have an open invite to come on anytime you'd like, man. So thanks for listening. Keep writing. Good luck with all of your summer writing. Get outside. Write outside. It's a good time to do that. And we will catch you next time. Hopefully not too far in the future, because now that school year's done, should have a little bit more time.
Should have some time.
Yeah, talk some craft with John. So, best of luck and stay in progress, everyone.